the when, the where, the why, and that would all equal out to the who. When it comes to the Idaho 4, we have a wide spread of theories. There are so many different thoughts and narratives that people truly believe in when it comes to the murders of 4 University of Idaho college students, Kaylee, Maddie, Xana, and Ethan. None of those actual narratives at this very moment can be proven wrong or right. I mean, many would say the case has been solved just because there was an arrest made of one Bryan Kohberger. Others, including myself, scream from the rooftops, this case is nowhere near solved. Hell, I don't even know in the court of law if they have enough evidence or enough even cojones to take this to trial and convict one Bryan Kohberger. You see, many out there have chosen a side already before this has even been displayed before all of us with the evidence that we need to make our determination on whether one would be guilty or not guilty. That's why in our country, it is built upon the freedoms of a man and a woman being deemed innocent until proven guilty. But you see, I, unfortunately, have been through the justice system and knows that's not how it typically plays out. But I also understand that investigations can be rushed, they can be tainted, they can be manipulated, and at the end of the day, they can be disproven and shown that they incarcerated the wrong person for the crime. When it comes to Bryan Kohberger, I stand firmly that I believe an innocent man is being held behind bars at this very moment because of desperation of a state that's now in the focal view of so many that it's not used to being in front of. You have to understand, in these smaller states like Idaho and many similar to it, they're not used to the glamour and the shining lights of people focusing in on what happens in their very cities. So when one of their high-profile cases becomes very prominent, becomes the talk of the town, they don't quite know how to react because their way of holding justice in their areas is now in the spotlight. So things that they typically are able to get away with, they're not going to be able to in a case like this. Now, many would say that the Chad Daybell and the Lori Daybell, Lori Vallow, Lori Daybell, whatever she wants to go by today or yesterday or tomorrow, would be one of their highest profile cases. And we all saw that case was pretty easy for Idaho to work its way through because they were both guilty based upon their own actions. They showcased their own guilt. That's not what's happening with Bryan Kohberger. He's sitting patiently. He is showing his respects of the court, even though he knows he's getting a very bad shake when it comes down to things. This case will be determined in the future by the Supreme Court. In my opinion, it will go to Supreme Court before he is ever fully convicted or found guilty in a state level. I think that's where Bryan Kohberger's savior will come. I believe that a higher court will step in and right the ship. As for me being a guilter, I'm far from. I'm a man that is willing to stand right in that very courtroom and walk myself to be seated behind the defendant, Bryan Kohberger, in full support. I'm a man that will stand beside his family and not allow the disrespect to come from those who want to blame them for Bryan Kohberger sitting in that defendant's chair. I, however, will not push narratives based upon guilt or innocence in any true crime case, because I believe at looking at everything with open eyes and taking it all in. I listen to the opinions of all. Sometimes I speak before I think, and I put a narrative or a theory down without actually stating beforehand, in my opinion, I just disagree. And that's my own fault in doing. I think there is great information that comes from just about anybody who's willing to dig in and dig deep and speak upon cases to bring out the many different aspects and information about the case. I can learn from all of it. So I don't want to lay any disrespect on anybody's intention of doing well in presenting information. We all theorize. We all share our opinions. And at the end of the day, that creates a narrative based upon how we feel. So that would be mine, his, hers narrative. And that's okay, because you have to speak upon things that you believe in. You have to speak upon things that you, yourself, me, myself, think and feel and emotionally can tie ourselves to. That's why I think it's important that I do my due diligence and share with you my thoughts, my opinions, because just in a recent live that I was doing, a great question was asked. What do I think happened? Who do I think did it? And in retrospect, in thinking back, in all the conversations I've had, I've never really displayed and laid out for you, based upon my thoughts, my feelings, who, why, when, or where something happened and who did it. Been very careful to walk a fine line, because I don't want to ever point fingers at somebody who's not involved in something or innocent. Kind of like I don't want people pointing fingers at Bryan Kohberger as if he's already been found guilty of this very crime, because he has not. And that's why I believe it's very important that I just go ahead and do a very new series that I want to put out based upon my thoughts, my feelings. Not so much a narrative, but I want to take the aspect, and as if you've noticed, I've reverted back to a convict's thoughts, true crime. I still have my second channel, which is a convict's thoughts, prison talk. But this channel has to still be based upon who I am. I can't change that. I can't look for what would be a more professional saran wrap around who I am. I'm ARHayes. This is a convict's thoughts. We do talk true crime, and we do use a unique view at the way we present our feelings about the crimes. That 04, it's a crazy one. This one has many mind-boggled, and in my opinion, I think it still has investigators, prosecutors, and even the FBI just kind of mentally tied up. They just don't know. And someone like me looking at it, I revert back into my old thinking days of the not only actions that I utilized within my daily life, but those around me and how they acted and how they presented themselves and the way that they conducted the day-to-day business within their criminal activities. My 4-part series is going to target in on the very aspects of an investigation that I feel as though are truly important. And it was kind of funny because I tuned in the other day to my TV, 48 Hours Investigates. You know, that little concept that the initial 48 hours of an investigation could possibly be the most key moments of an investigation. And I remember chuckling as I heard that and watched that, because I said to myself, and I even looked at my wife and said, you know, the initial 48 hours, if that's the most important part of the investigation in catching the people who have committed the crimes, our law enforcement and investigation teams across the United States are coming up a little short, because not many cases are solved within that initial 48 hours, unless it's somebody that's been caught red-handed or left the perfect trail of evidence to find them. Meaning they were caught on camera or they've left eyewitnesses. When it comes to the Idaho 4, see, it's a little bit different of a story. Many will say that they have eyewitnesses or they have it on video. But do they? Do they really? And that's why through time, I think the step-by-step process of being able to prove the when, the where, the why, and even include in that why the how, will equal out to a great perspective and a little bit of like a sketch, as if you're a sketch artist working with the witness. You're going to use that pen and that pencil and you're going to sketch out the who. Many have their opinions of who committed this crime. Some have a narrative that they directly feel links to the people who committed the crime. They just don't have the names. And that's okay. Because you know what? In my opinion, and I'll give you a little bit of a hint of my tail end of it all, there's going to be either a lot of names or some shocking names that come out at the end of the Idaho 4 case. Whether it be now, through investigative measures that helps clear Bryan Kohberger of the charges, or if it actually comes out later, once a not guilty verdict or a dismissal of charges against Bryan Kohberger occurs, and those investigators have to go back to work knowing they're still under the spotlight to work the magic and find out who committed the crime. This story is a wild one. Why do you think writers of books dive in so in-depthly right here, right now, before this has even been to trial, putting out publications and books and everything else, maybe even movies, because it's a money maker. I mean, come on, let's even be real from a YouTube creator standpoint of it all. If you wanted to look at all of the cases that have been through the true crime community, this is going to stack up to being one of the highest and most profitable true crime cases ever spoken about on the YouTube streets. I mean, of course, you got the Chris Watts, you've got the, you know, there's a couple that go in there, the Gabby Petito's, the Summer Wells. There's many Sebastian Rogers that are profitable. I think Idaho 4 is going to be right up there at the top of that list as well. The when, the where, the why is going to equal the who. And my 4-part series will launch here in just a few. May ARHayes, Convict's Thoughts. Thanks for joining me, and look forward to seeing you again soon.